Hey,
So, how's it going?
good man. How are you?
Good, good. I oh, you're gonna have Geo present in a second.
It's all good. What's up, G?
Everyone's gonna meet my child today. He's
Yeah,
homesick.
no worries.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Stoked. Let me just fix that light up. It's awful.
I'm excited to have you here. I
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
okay.
Well,
Plug the hole. Hey Richard, what are you still doing awake? It's
yeah,
3 o'clock here. So what time is it in South Africa?
it's late.
Hey everyone. Welcome to Technology Thursday. We can't call it Tether Talk Tuesday because, well, it's not Tuesday. So let's go with Technology Thursday, talking all things technology. And what better way to kick off this potentially new series is none other than, oh, it's only 10 o'clock in South Africa, none other than with Rich Myers, the Digi Richie, the most awesome Digitech that I know, besides Rich Hurd Cook from South
the,
Africa,
the North American version.
the North American version.
Other than
So,
that,
Rich,
a lot of good text in the chat right now, though. I'm watching this name of people. I'm like, oh man, now I can't BS this one at all.
the pressure is on. I know. Hey
Yeah,
guys, all the Digitechs that are currently live that know Richie, I want you to ask him those tough questions.
yeah. Ask me anything. I
Give him,
mean, let's just keep this conversation going. I mean, it's been
yeah,
so cool with what we've done with Instagram, and like all of us have kind of come together, and the amount of brands that have come out of it. I mean, like there's I can name 4 or 5 dudes that started their own company because of this
yeah,
type of stuff, this conversation, this platform that we have. So thanks for everybody for
agreed.
joining, and so I think you
We're
have some
so excited.
questions from the other part from the
We
post,
do.
right?
We've
All right.
got some great questions. So I want to kind of give everyone some preface with this. Rich and I talk quite a bit. I'd like to call him my good friend because
Oh,
I talk to him all the time.
hi, Jared.
Um, so is Jared here?
Yeah, so I can bust my
Um,
balls later.
Rich and I were talking, and I've been reached out to. I manage strategic partnerships. Part of what I do for Tether Tools is managing strategic partnerships, and I've been reached out to by a lot of pros asking, how do I get started as a Digitech? What does it take to be a Digitech? All of those things, and I've been in this industry for a pretty long time, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a ditch tech. So I thought it would be a great time to ask those questions that a lot of people had of, what is the best way to get started? And I think the first question that popped up that I thought was a really great question was, do you need to have
Agents.
an agent?
So yeah, that's such a weird thing now, right? Because there is kind of agencies for us. You
Mm-hmm.
have, but it's not really agencies. There's more like services. What's up, Grippy?
Yeah.
There's agency listing kind of sources. Production Paradise is the first one that comes to mind. And when you get on lists like that, that kind of elevates you, kind of the same way an agent would for stills. You're not gonna like I don't know any techs that have agents, but more producer. I guess a producer would be what we think of as an agent. Like I try to work more so with producers now than the photographers and that because they travel with the clients. The clients are hiring producers, and the producers are running these jobs now. So it's almost like an agent and a producer are the same thing for us. Or
Yeah.
those online listing sites are pretty good. I don't use them personally. I rely heavily on years of just my name being around, but also referrals. We
Yeah.
have a tight list of homies that it's like like if I need something in Boston, I can call Vitalis, or Vitalis can call me. Or I'm sorry if I'm burning your name, Chris, but it's kind of cool. It's a very small community, so I think as far as agency stuff goes, no, I don't think that would be the right way to go because I think automatically you're putting somebody in between you and the production, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like
Yeah.
now you're adding another layer of things for you to deal with. And I mean, listen, you can work every day, but then what about the jobs you don't need? I'd say, for me personally, I think the agent would be crazy.
Okay. Okay.
For a
No,
digital
no,
tech. I think for a photographer, I don't see the value in having somebody market you too much. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like the producer kind of do that for us, and like that's how I get a lot of my work, and that's kind of how my name's traveled is like a producer like, hey, I need a homie in like Philly, or on the East Coast, or up until a couple of years ago when there wasn't a lot of us, I would get calls for everywhere. I mean, anywhere. You just got on
Yeah.
planes. Now there's so many, like, I don't travel as much because I can be like, hey, there's a guy there, there's a guy here.
Yeah. Now, Rich, let me ask you. So you've been in the industry for a really long time. You actually started as a wedding photographer,
Yeah,
which I'm going to
kinda.
say that you loved,
Yeah,
and plus
that's where I met my
photojournalist.
wife.
You went to school as a photojournalist, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I studied
So,
photojournalism and then came out. Yeah.
okay, and you're in Philadelphia now. When you got your start, you've always had a passion for photography, but you've been in the industry for a really long time. What was the first step for you to get started as a Digitech? Was it a mentoring? Was it interning? Was it just kind of putting your name out there and saying, "Hey, can I just come to work with you so I can learn with you?" How did your journey happen?
Kind of all those things. It was more at the time, when I was transitioning from a first assistant, from the wedding world and all that, and become, getting into the higher end of photography where digital techs were now on set, where before, if you don't know one, you don't know they exist. I tell
Yeah.
people I do, and they're like, what the hell is that? And you're like, you explain to them, they're like, oh, I guess that makes sense. I never thought of that. It's like, yeah, you don't know.
We
I
just
did
discussed
first. Thank God.
technology how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the crazy shit you guys need done, like somebody's got to do
Yeah.
it. So, it, yeah, it's kind of one of those things. Repeat the question, kind of. I lost track with that
What
little
was your
change there.
journey to get
Oh,
started from a photographer to becoming a Digitech? Was
there
there
was
something where you just
mentorship. Yeah,
okay?
there was some mentorship. My buddy Sean moved to LA and for years was like, "Hey, come to LA, come to LA." And I'd come out and do some jobs here and there as a first or second or fourth assistant, or
Yeah.
just that little level above production assistant. I didn't drive the van; I got to sit in the back. Like, but he opened up my eyes to a lot of it and showed me, he was moving into motion. So like DITs have always been on set and always involved. So he kind of saw that and saw that happening in stills, and started that out in West. And I saw him doing it. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, this is more so what my brain does automatically than shooting. Like, I'm not a photographer. Like, I
Yeah.
am a photographer, but like, I know where my limits are. And like, unless I had an agent call me and say, Richie, I want to hire you and put you on all these jobs, I'm useless. Like, I'm not good at the back end. So
Yeah.
like, once I saw the position, I took mentorships with him and Chris Noling and a couple other guys, and just kind of came back to Philly and cultivated with Ben Loyner. And the good thing was, when I was working with Ben, we were also doing massive key art galleries. I mean, we shot Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, like Walking Dead, like these massive campaigns. So it was like the natural transition was there. It was like we were
Yeah.
hiring techs, but in Philly, I was his tech, and I was like, finally, I was like, hey man, like I'm not gonna be your first anymore. I'm just gonna tech. And he was like,
Yeah.
okay, mate, sounds good. And I was like, cool. And that
Yeah.
really, that's when it springboarded, and that's what was like, okay, somebody gave their confidence in me just being the tech, and took that responsibility of having just a tech, and budgeting just for a tech. Like, that's a
Yeah.
huge thing on itself. Like, a lot of clients can't afford a tech.
Hmm.
It's, we're not cheap, and we shouldn't be cheap. We're
Rightfully
bringing,
so.
you're bringing, yeah, it should never be about money, right? Like, we're bringing a talent and skill set that takes everything away from the photographer and production so they can do whatever they need to do. And we take on all the stress of, a lot of details that really would go without,
Yeah.
files missing, renamed, or, just little minute things like that. Just one file goes missing, and that's always the file needed. So
Yeah.
once that transition was available, and I could make the swing into full time, that's where Ben started telling his friends. And Ben was Robert Trachtenberg's first assistant. He was David LaChapelle's first assistant. So it was like, holy shit, like now all these guys are calling me, like not them specifically, but like all of their old assistants who are now these big shooters. And now I'm traveling the world with David Say, shooting these crazy coastal living towers, all because I can do comps on a laptop on the fly no matter
Yeah.
what. And that skill set is something that not
It's
everybody has,
incredible.
and not everybody needs to have.
Yeah.
Some of us don't need to have that. I have friends that are like, nah, I don't comp. It's like, okay, cool, you don't have to,
Yeah.
but it's what you offer, and that kind of broke me out to all of the guys in LA, and then Jimmy Chin, and like all that just kind of unfolded because my name got passed around, because there wasn't anybody that was just taking the risks. That was just like, okay, I got computers, I'll travel, I'll figure out how to power it. Like, I was a first assistant for years, so I know how to light, I know how the cameras work, I know etiquette, which is super important, especially when you're going with on these kind of jobs where your crew is celebrity and then your talent's like some crazier celebrity and you're like, like
Yeah.
so the transition from being a first, like going from like the wedding world to a first was really from first to digital tech was really the paying attention on set and watching how the digital techs I wanted, like I watched what they did. I saw them roll their kits in. I was like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm
Hmm.
not gonna be one of these guys that comes with a minimal amount of gear. I'm coming with what I need to get the job done, and hopefully they pay for it. And now they do, but not always.
Yeah, of course, of course. So that's a really interesting point that you just mentioned, etiquette. That's something that we talked about last week. I mentioned in one of my own experiences, I was on set and I can't even remember what show it was for now, but I was on set for the technology side of it, and a first AC phone went off, and you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Especially on a motion set,
yeah,
the
like
AC's
you
phone should
just
be the first one off.
like you're gonna be the person that nobody wants to work with at this point. So
Yeah,
let's talk about etiquette. What is, because I think, people see, when they see and hear Digitech and they hear about you going on set and you working with some of these amazing photographers in these movies, they heard Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and Jimmy Chin, but we don't touch on the important part, which is this etiquette. So let's talk about that.
yeah,
What is etiquette for as a Digitech or just being on set
yeah.
in general?
It's kind of just knowing your lane, right? Like the biggest thing is not letting your ego, because we do kind of, I mean, I definitely have a little bit of an ego, but that's also, I'm almost 40 years old. So that just comes naturally, right? I hope, I don't know. But I you know, it's just being present and not overwhelmingly annoying is the
Hmm.
biggest thing. Um, it's knowing how to navigate those scenarios because you're one on one with the client most of the time. Like I have the art director, and usually like whoever the end client is will be next to us too at our carts or wherever at our monitors. Or you always are interacting. Like I'd say 75% of the jobs I'm on, I'm interacting with everybody. You're not just interacting like the first assistant will only interact with maybe like production and like that kind of stuff, but like they're never talking to clients and that kind of stuff. Like when you're the digital tech, you need to know how to like kind of communicate with everybody and not care who they are, kind of thing. It's like
Yeah.
just treat everybody the same with the same level of respect and just tell them what they need to know and don't step on toes and don't cause controversy. Don't be that guy that like the one of the biggest things, and like I know guys that don't get hired because they've done this so many times. Like you're done a shot, like it'll be a food shot, right? And you're
Hmm.
done. And the tomato's been in the wrong place the entire time. They wait for it, they'll go through and they'll shoot the whole thing, get the plates and everything. They'll go, hey, did you want to move that tomato? And you're like, holy shit, why didn't you say that? You know what I mean? Or like that kind of stuff, like that weird,
Yeah.
like,
Do we have a puppy?
send me a bike. That'd be cool. um, so
Yeah.
like just knowing to stay in your lane. Sorry about that distraction.
No, you're fine.
Just it's you have to be able to communicate to everybody on set equally, but you have to know what you're looking for at the same time. Um, you can't. It's such a weird thing. Like if there's a celebrity on set, say, don't go over and ask for an autograph. Like
Mhm.
that's the most cringy thing you can do. If they're like,
Yeah.
hey, you guys want me to sign anything at the end? Then go over. But like that's the weirdest thing when you see that. And like I've been on a lot of celebrity sets where like all of a sudden you're like, what is going? Is that guy like the second assistant is really going? Hey, will you sign this for my uncle? It's like
Yeah.
you're walking around the guys from Kiss, like you're asking Gene Simmons, like funny, like I think I told you that story when Gene like walked in the one day we were shooting this show. He bought an arena football league, and he walked in and like put his boot on. I was on a Hollywood Mag Junior, it was Sean's, and he put his boot on my bottom cart deck and took a Glock out and put it like on my cart and was like, mind if I leave this here, joking around, and then put it in a Pelican, safely stored it away. I'm not saying there
Yeah.
was anything dangerous. It was just funny. It was like one of these shocking moments, but it was like you have to, like, those are the moments where you're just like, you can't be like, like you just have to be like, okay, weird shit's happening, okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
Gotta
Like,
go with it. Yeah.
yeah, and it was 10 years ago. That's what I'm talking about now. Like I would never say that years ago, but
Yeah.
just because it was
That's
like
so
one of
funny.
those incidents where you're just like, huh, like I'm not comfortable, but yeah,
Yeah,
you just gotta, stay at your computer and just stay in your lane. You know, I don't know. Don't be the one that bums you out. If it's gonna bum you out, don't say it to somebody else.
I agree. I agree. So what does it take to, another question we got is what does a prep day look like for you when you know you're going on set? I've been following you for a while now, and you have loads of gear. And I
Yeah,
imagine you don't always bring all of that gear. So
right.
what are some of the key essentials that you bring to a shoot with you?
That's actually a really good question. So like if you follow me, like I have tons of Pelican 15 series. I have tons of Think Tank backpacks and I have tons of Wander backpacks. I'm very uniform with my gear. I have six of the same Pelican, and then I use stuff like this for everything else. So this is a mishmash one. This is like if you're like Richard asked about like my minimal kit, like I had to go shoot something where we shoot projectors. So this is a minimal kit. I need a power block, a USB-C adapter, an Ethernet cable, and a HDMI cable. That's all I need. So that literally went in a backpack with a laptop. On my thought process is always like I compartmentalize everything, so I don't have to bring everything. When I started bigger jobs, I would bring tons of shit and have these bags sterile, packed with all this stuff, and be like, I don't need half this stuff. And
Yeah.
now I've learned the right questions to ask, and that's kind of like a good tip, I guess, would be the thing, that ask up front, like days before, what your client are looking for. Like find out if there's needed, if they need extra monitors or this stuff. Like pack extra stuff, but always ask. Like ask what you're
Yeah.
doing. And that's how I've dialed in my packing. Like I've strategically made all my kits so they're just singularity. So it's like if I'm just going to do tethered capture, I can grab this case, put these tether cables in it, and I'm out the door. I'm not going,
Hmm.
oh man, where's this tether cable? Or there's that tether cable. Like if it's a USB-C camera, the tether cables
Yeah.
are in this one bag, and this one bag has two camera cables, two extensions, a tether block, and a clamp, and then there's a USB 3 bag like that, and then there's a USB 2 bag like that, and that's just so you have what you need instead of like that. That's the worst when you're on a job and you're like, oh man, I forgot to pack one cable. It's like that's our job. Like you have to have those cables.
Yeah.
So to me, like I compartmentalize and I organize the crap out of everything. I have severe OCD when it comes to it, and
Hmm.
then so I find out my role expectations. There's Ben Lynn right there. Dude's a legend. Love you, Benny. Uh, I find out my expectations and I pack accordingly. I don't bring excessive amounts of gear, but I bring enough for backups, and I bring enough
Yeah.
so I can elevate what I do as well. So if we have, especially with COVID now, like I'll bring stuff for iPads. They might not have ordered it, but I'll say, okay, I know there's like 10 clients on this job. They ordered a 24-inch monitor. I'm going to throw a couple iPads in, and like, if to talk to the producer and say, hey, you got a couple extra bucks, we can spread things out a little bit. If not here, and then you're doing the producer a favor too. You're showing
Hmm.
your value in that way.
Yeah.
Um, I try not to bring over redundant, but there is redundance for everything. If there's a laptop, there's a second laptop. If there's a tether cable, there's a second tether cable. If there's a hard drive, there's a second hard drive. Things happen, and if you don't have it, you're going to need it. If you do
Yeah.
have it, you never need it. So knock
Yeah.
on wood, but
So when you say a producer, let's just say the producer orders equipment, you bill
yeah,
them a certain amount for the computer, for
correct,
the laptop, for
correct.
the iPads, to this, to that. What do technology changes. I mean, computers are constantly being revamped and reintroduced. And are you constantly replacing computers? What's the length of time that you keep your equipment before you go on to replace a new set of it?
It's difficult. It's you ride the wave of, I
Okay.
mean, for what I do, it's Apple 100%. So it's you ride the wave of what they produce. Like I was an early adopter of the M1 with the 13-inch, but that was
Hmm.
bought for a specific task. That's bought for when I ingest motion, just as a download computer. So I have a nice mobile kit, and they're strategic. It pulls less power. So, I would
Yeah.
never use that for a tethered capture machine. Not to say it's not capable, but I would never use that as a tethered capture machine. I often carry as a backup though. It's really hard because you got to stay ahead, but like on the cusp. What I tend to do is I buy one or two laptops at a time, and then I'll sell my friends my older stuff. but I'll keep one of them of each generation. And like,
Yeah.
that's coming super handy because now, like with all the Zoom stuff, I had a job over the pandemic that we had to put 9 set cameras up. So the client could just
Wow.
change Zoom feeds to see what was going on. And it was all compliance thing because it was a very large pharmaceutical, and you have people all over the world, and they asked if we could do it. And I was like, yeah, of course I can do it. Because I have 19 laptops, it just made it easier because I keep some
Yeah.
of the older stuff. You don't always need to keep it, but to me, you look at it, the biggest thing we do is, so a lot of guys might not charge rental. That's the biggest thing you can do. I don't
Okay.
pay for my gear. I pay for it up front. I believe in no debt, so I buy it and then I rent it out. And you have an ROI, right? So maybe a laptop, I hope for a 30-day ROI. That means in 30 days, I get my return on investment. That means 30 times I rent that out, that's $6,000 laptop rented for $200 a day. Well, that laptop's now paid off. Well, that laptop's going to work probably 300 days. So
Yeah.
now you have 270 days. And like, that's my biggest thing is like, you're going to have to start out a little bit behind to be a tech. You're
Hmm.
definitely going to start out broke. It's one of those things where you have to swallow a pill and go, okay, this is going to suck for a bit. But when you come out on the other side, it's a whole different world. Now you're like, oh, I need a 16-inch. You just pick up a phone and call and order. If I need a laptop now, it's not like 10 years ago. I was like, shit, how am I going to make this work? What credit card am I going to put on? What's the interest rate? Now, oh shit, I'm going to be $10,000 in debt because like I'm looking at towers right now. I'm looking at a $20,000 tower. I'm not looking at to take it. That's like a car payment. So to me,
Yeah.
if I can't afford to buy that and then get my ROI out of it, I don't want to put that money out.
Okay.
But 10 years ago, I wouldn't even have thought of it. It would be like, oh, I can't afford this. That's when you put the money ahead, it comes back. It just takes a little while, and it might not happen on the first 6 months, year of you working. Once it does happen, though, and it will, because as you elevate, you work for more work and you have more gear and you're able to be on more sets and contribute more. That's the biggest thing. The more you can contribute, now you can rent your gears back to the jobs. But yeah, to me, it's when it's needed. Like right
Yeah.
now, I'm gonna run my 16-inch. I have two of them. I'm gonna run them into the ground until they make them M1s, and it's gonna be a second generation M1. I see what the M1 does, and I just ordered a mini, and I love this M1 chip, but
Yeah.
I'm not a first adopter of the 16-inch M1. I was a first adopter of the 16-inch, but I'll wait for the second, for like the M1 version 2, whatever that's going to be, because that's going to be a scary computer. And that's just from 15 years of doing this and knowing how scary brand new computers are. You can buy a computer today that if you don't buy the right, configuration, it's not worth having. Like
Hmm.
people go, oh, I saved $500. I got a smaller hard drive. It's like, if that's a tethered capture machine and somebody calls and goes, hey, I got you on IQ, 150 megapixel back 3 days. Well, now you only have a 500 gig hard drive in your computer. That's literally like 2 hours of capture. And then they're gonna be like,
Yeah.
hey, can you spit tips out? Now you're working out like external drives. So it goes back to, we're gonna be spending a lot of money. You're gonna get it back. It's how you make a living. And ROI, once ROI, return of interest or investment, that's, it's like our little stock market game. It's you buy a $6,000 laptop, you rent it out, and now you have a commodity. Now you have something that like it's just making you money. Now I know every time I put it in a bag, that's my beer money, or that's my, it's gonna pay for tires for my bike or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a 40-year-old baby, so I just sorry, my references are all toys and beer, but
No, it's fine.
not beer. I don't even drink. I don't know why I said beer, but uh, you know, it, we buy a lot of stuff. I spend a
Hmm.
lot of money. My biggest thing, and I hate to say it, is I use Amazon because I can buy 9 different things, get them in, test them, and return 8. And
Okay. Yeah.
that's really helped my growth. And it's kind of like one of those backhanded things. 'Cause it kind of screws Bezos too, like
Yeah.
because you don't pay for return shipping, so it's like, I got you.
Yeah.
And that's sold discounted, and Amazon covers the discount. So it's like, I feel a little bit better about using Amazon when I do that stuff.
I
But
have to wonder, and this is a totally separate conversation, but you have to look at
yeah,
his business model and you're like, you
yeah,
make billions
yeah, yeah.
and you
I
give
mean,
what feels like everything away to your customers.
it is, and I mean, if you look at the whole, I mean, Amazon, if you look at the beginning of it, I mean, it's kind of fascinating, right? He started an online bookstore and he lost money for the
Hmm.
first, until I think they still
Yeah.
lose money on certain percentages or something. Like they're not a profitable company. They just live on, I don't know the financial person terms, but they live on that weird rich guy hedge thing where it's like, well, you're valued at, you might not, he can't never go get a check for $1 billion. Like he can't
Yeah.
walk into a bank and be like, I want $1 billion. Like, I'm like, okay, sell us Amazon. Like,
Yeah.
well, you can't sell Amazon. Like these things are so big that, I don't know enough about that. But, as Amazon's grown, it's the technology end's kind of come in too. And when I order that kind of stuff, it makes it more seen by others too, which helps the whole world in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm not justifying. I'm just saying like it's cool because you can look on Amazon for something and then like dig around and find like the company that makes it and they sell for like $1. It's like Alibaba
Interesting.
sometimes,
Yeah,
but
it's
you can
usually
try stuff.
Alibaba.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When you, I don't want to ask how much you bill because that's a personal question,
You can
but
ask. It's all
for,
market. It's where I'm working.
so that was my
So
first question is like, how have you set up your billing structure where, every job, like for
uh,
example, that big pharmaceutical company, obviously your rate was significantly higher. There's more equipment involved, which means
right,
there was more Digitech involved.
right,
When you look at a job like that compared to the launch of a new brand, you obviously
right.
build them different. He's a
Yeah.
cutie. Oh, Rick thinks you're a cutie.
Ah.
I just saw that pop up. When you look at those, how have you set up yourself to bill where it makes sense and not lose
um,
money? That's the big thing. I don't want
yeah.
to say it's about making money, but you have a family, you have a mortgage, you
Yeah,
have all of those things.
yeah. I got two furry dogs that eat a lot of stuff. And vacuums breaking constantly because they shed a lot.
Hmm.
All right. So there's a couple different schools of thought on it. I have different types of clients. It's just like any other kind of service industry. You have different kind of like customers. If Joe Schmo calls me and they
Hmm.
say, hey, we're coming to Philly. We have 5 days of this. We need this, that, and the other thing. I tend to typically charge more of a New York rate because you're coming in from out of town as opposed to a local rate. New York rates kind of dictate. I'd say Boston to Atlanta. Atlanta, its rates are actually a little higher because there's a lot more work going on in Atlanta. I mean, there's huge work going on in Atlanta where there's big work everywhere, but not like Atlanta. It's just I did a couple jobs there recently. I was just like, this is crazy, like how much you guys work. And I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I almost, if I could live there, I would. But
Don't move
I
to
love
Atlanta.
Philadelphia.
Move to
No,
Tennessee.
no.
Move to Nashville.
Yeah. Maybe close, maybe. But it's talking to other techs, and that's the biggest thing. If you DM me and you say, "Hey, what are your rates?" I'll tell you. I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I tell people, like I won't brag about it on set. Like we don't make that much more money, but we have a lot more responsibility. So it's almost
Hmm.
like, the guy on the construction team that's holding the flag. That dude makes a lot more money than the guy driving the truck because he's standing in the middle of traffic. So you know what I mean? Like you get paid
Yeah, of
for
course.
your stress and everything.
Okay.
Um, it's and then gear is kind of years ago it was kind of hard. It was very arbitrary.
Hmm.
You kind of found out other people's numbers or like because there wasn't like you couldn't go to a website and be like I'm gonna rent a laptop. Like the hell's a laptop rental cost? I don't know. What do you guys want to pay? Like and depending where you live, a lot of places won't pay computer rentals now. So like there's that also knowing what happens in different cities and like if you're coming on as a scab or something like that for union jobs like it, rental is one of those things you build rates. You make a little more than a first assistant is usually the local. If not, some first assistants make the same as me now. Which isn't bad. Like I go off of motion rates now, so
Hmm.
I've kind of seen like what like the unions do and those guys do, and I go okay. So this is kind of how you structure, and you have a 10-hour day or you have a 12-hour day. But I also like if a producer calls me and they'll say, okay, is it a 14-hour day? Okay, instead of doing all this bullshit with overtime and all that, can we just come up with a flat rate? Like
Yeah.
that's my biggest thing. I own all my own gear. I don't sub rent anything. I need a Flanders monitor, so now I have a Flanders monitor. Now I can go on set and be like, here you go. And if they're like, hey, listen, we only have $150 today, it's like there it is. to 150 bucks. You know, so sometimes your ROIs can change, but you know, you talk to the producers or the photographer that's hiring you, whoever's hiring you, just say, okay, like this is what I want. What do you have? You know, it's going to change. You know, but there are standard rates for what we do. There's kind of
Okay.
become like levels of, you know, it's not really talked about publicly, but I'm sure if you slide into the Reddit group or in a DM somewhere, you know, just ask your local guys. Like if you're in Chicago, ask Grant. Like be like, Grant, hey, yada yada. Like, what do you charge? Like not ball, but it's not like you're not. It's not a personal question because you don't want to fuck the pardon my language. You don't want to mess the industry up by one undercharging, leaving money on the table because now that
Mhm.
money's not there for the next job, and
Yeah.
that's that weird cheap line that kind of gets a little sketchy. If you come in cheap, now you're the cheap guy. And I think we talked about this before, but now the next job they're not going to bill properly. So like if they want to hire a guy like me and say, hey, we need 6 monitors, this guy did it for this much. It's like, well, I mean, can I? Yes, but should I? No, because now next time, you know, it's like one of those weird things.
Agreed.
Borrow lenses or Adorama rentals is like if I'm renting strobe, that's where I use like I kind of gauge what they charge because that's what everybody
Mhm.
uses, and then I not bad business undercut, but I charge a little bit less, you know, to make it
Makes sense.
to sweeten the pot. That's just business though. That's not undercutting.
Yeah.
Like, these are major companies. Day
Yeah.
rate, I don't. Day rates never touched. Rentals are always like they're like, oh, we only have, you know, say we have 1,200 hours for the day and your kit. I'll go, okay, you know, we'll just make it a kit rate. It's done.
Yeah.
Everything's this, you know, instead of going, okay, well, my day rate's blah blah blah. My computer's 350. My laptop's this, you know. Instead of going through all that, just you know, sometimes it's easier to package it up.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes total sense. So so we're running out of time because it is 3:30. My final question for you, what are some great resources? What are some good resources for photographers that want to become Digitechs or tech heads? Because there are tech heads. I have two questions
Yeah.
for you. What are some great resources that someone can turn to help them become a Digitech?
Um, man, it's there's no like one website to send somebody to or YouTube even like, and we've talked about this. I've tried to do it. Like I did it years ago. That's how Richie all started and all that.
Yeah.
There's no like, you know, there's master classes for everything but being a digital tech, man. Me and Jared keep talking about it, and then we go, let's just never do that again. But I, there's there's not a lot of resources. It's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of like, okay, take your computer, plug in a camera, and just shoot the camera to the computer, and unplug it and mess around, screw around. You know, think about worst case scenarios and recreate that on your free time. That's my biggest resource. I don't like other than reading hard drive speeds or cable lengths specifications, I don't have websites I really visit too often. I go to Capture One's blog a lot to see what's going on. I'm part of their beta conversations, so like I go in there. Uh, LS started a great Reddit. It's called Photo Assistance. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really good resource. If you ever have a single question, you can post it in there and like you'd be surprised who drops in like answers to questions. For me, it's cool because like I'll see Fanini read and I'm like, that's so cool. I love these dudes. It's so neat. So I'm a fan of like I love Instagram because I get to see everybody's kit and I'm like a fan of all this stuff. Like I love what I do and I love seeing cool like kits built out and like we've
Yeah.
pushed this industry so far. The one thing I want to touch on is I got an email from Tether Tools. I think yesterday about the Air Direct. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
public thing, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'll speak very honestly about this. I'm a big fan of Air Direct. We all know the limitations of it. That's what those emails are for, guys. Read that email, fill out that survey, help them. I do this. I've been doing this for years, but like everybody loves to complain. Put your 2 cents into it and say, okay, Tether Tools is asking us what they want. They're saying, what do you guys want?
Yeah.
What can we do? What can we do to make this thing what you want it to be? Tell them. I tell
Agreed.
them. Now we need other people to tell them. So
Yeah.
if you got that email, please respond to it because that's such a great platform. I think a lot of people shorthand it because they're, oh, it's slow. It's 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 magic. There's a tangent thing and a non-tangent thing happening. Like you have
Yeah.
files flying through space. It's not for every job, but it could be if we help develop it. And like I don't work for Tether Tools. You guys are just really good to be. Your homies with me. You let me give discount codes and you send me some free shit every once in a while and give me discounts. I don't work for you guys. I don't care if people buy the Air Direct. But I do care if you're gonna talk crap on it. Tell Tether Tools in. Like
Yeah.
I get a lot of DMs about, and I send these DMs to you all the
Mhm.
time about gear not working or a cable going out, and it's like, well, I don't use Tether Tools because this cable broke. And it's like, okay, man, I have every frigging cable ever. They all
Oh,
break. I'm not saying one company's worse or better or nothing, like because I don't. I think all cables are slightly, completely equal in some
I
capacity.
mean, we are better. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's.
We are better.
I mean, there aren't, so I obviously prefer them. But you know, I'm not saying I just don't want. I don't want to be one of those negative people saying, "Oh, those other cables suck." I just prefer Tether Tools personally. I've made
We
a business
appreciate that.
off of using them since Josh put the first black USB 2 cable out. I remember
Yeah.
buying it from B&H and be like, that's his Tether on it. That's crazy. Because, you know, Tether wasn't an everyday word 10 years ago, you know, like Tether, people would be like, what does Tether mean? It's like, yeah, it's not the game with the ball, and the, you know, but
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I have to appreciate it. I will, echoing Rich's sentiment, please fill out those surveys. They are
yeah,
important to us. And I will be honest, at the beginning of the year, right after we launched the Air Direct, I reached out to several photographers who had registered their Air Direct asking for feedback, because the whole way that we grow and evolve our products is from hearing from you guys. We know what we want on the market because we pay attention to people like Rich and Richard and Jared and Jeff and all the guys that we work with and gals that we work with, Kira and B. We hear from them all the time, but we want to hear from our consumers, so that you guys can tell us what works and what you would love to see in the future. So I
yeah.
will echo
And
Rich's sentiment.
and guys, this stuff has warranties. Like stuff you buy has a warranty. So if you have a problem, reach out to them and say, hey, here's the problem. You might not get a replacement. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you broke something or you destroyed something, but it lets them know, okay, oh shit, this happens? Like we
Yeah.
didn't know that. Like USB 3, you know, the first USB 3 cables that came out, people were like, they don't work. Well, that wasn't Tether Tools' fault. That was the transition to the new MacBooks and USB 3 with the cameras not putting out enough power to support the data transmission. That wasn't anything new. And you guys said, okay, how do we fix this? We come out with this little adapter. Everything's fine now. And be like,
Yeah.
oh, well, you know, it's been shipped for a year. It's like, but you didn't give. You just took. You got to give back. You know, I remember before you, it was Lauren. And dude, when that thing came out, I was breaking them. I broke a lot of them. So you guys didn't have to. Like, that's what we do. And that's kind of why we're digital techs. I love breaking shit. And Tether Tools is an industry company. That's why I love you guys. I love a lot of the brands I work with. You guys are an actual you're a small company that's part of an industry. You're not, you started part of the industry. You started something, you brought something to fruition, but you continue to try to push it. And like the Air Direct survey and all that, like to expect a file from a 50 megapixel camera that weighs 78 megs, it's getting compressed in the camera, and the camera needs to allot all this power to doing all this crazy magic shit that you're expecting with the autofocus tracking eyeballs and all this. Like,
Hmm. It's
well,
just
it
not
takes like
realistic.
2.5 seconds for the raw file to show up. It's like, yeah, that's crazy. That's really fast. That's insane. That is fast. So like, yeah, 8 seconds. Yeah, 8 seconds sucks. It sucks. We use it for food shots. You know why? Because you have 8 seconds. You know, like there's an application for everything. I think
Agree.
that's one thing I want to tell. Like, and I think all my homies can agree. Like, we love breaking shit, and that's part of being a digital tech. Like, get stuff, break it, help the companies make it better, and then our jobs are easier. Like, I can now tether 45 feet on a USB-C cable. Why? Because,
Agreed.
well, Tether Tools listened to the conversations we had and figured out, like, okay, we don't need to do this, we don't need to do that. We just need to make a couple really good products that can expand instead of just
Yeah.
one okay product. Let's just make a bunch that come together. And you know, there's a lot to that. Sorry to go on a rant, but you know,
No, that's okay.
I always do that. You know,
No, that's okay.
um,
That's why I enjoy our conversations, because there's always such great information out there. Who's
these
it
are
from?
on. Somebody asked what the name of them was.
Oh,
It's one of these Amazon buys, so they don't come in orange anymore. I think I bought them out. I have about 30 of these. It's like $9. They're TSA makeup cases. If you look at my Amazon results, like 90% of the things I buy are for makeup because they're clear, so you can see through them, and they're TSA, so you can leave. You know, when you open one of my Pelicans, you can clearly, like, that's
see
a
what's
lot of the
that?
reason I do this too, because I travel so often. So like having them be able, you know, open the case and go, okay, they can see everything. They know there's nothing weird because there's a lot of Like when you look, I don't know if a lot of guys or a lot of folks have looked like at the X-ray of a bag with like a bunch of cables in it. It's sketchy. It's
Yeah.
so scary. Like if this didn't have a black, like if this was just a black, they'd be like, what is going on in there? There's all these batteries and cables. Like it's not a good look. So that's like, I love the Tether Tools brands, but there's also, the less expensive, different sizes. But for cables and shit, I have about 9 of these now. I keep ordering more.
I do constantly ship them those.
House.
Yeah.
Can I get some more actually?
Well,
I need more. I need more little ones.
I love it. They are orange, not orange. Thanks.
Yeah. Matt's from Philly. He understands.
I want to thank you for your time today.
Yeah,
let's do this again. You guys always be sure to continue to ask those questions after I post the video. Rich and I are always talking. We're always looking for fun stuff to do together since he refuses to move to Nashville.
Sooner than later.
I know. I'll just call you right
soon now. I have 5 cities coming up, and they're all like Mississippi, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. Like I'm like,
when are you going to be in Indiana?
I think middle of August. I've never been to Indiana.
I'm going to Indiana. Yeah. I'm doing an event with Robert's camera.
Oh
yeah.
Where are they at?
I don't know. I'll have to ask
know where Robert Cameras is. Is it in something Bend?
No, I don't think so.
Shop at Alan's camera.
Stop it. I love it. Yeah, Brendan's going to appreciate that.
I'm loyal to my family, and that's how I got where I am because I support them, they support me. That's how, it's how this world works. Thank you, guys.
Alan's camera, if you're local. If you're not local, go to their website or tethertools.com. We're always a great resource. But Rich, thank you again.
Off.
Yeah, but don't call me directly because I won't process that order directly. Just type in Rich Myers and you'll get 10% off at checkout. Yeah. So thank you again for coming and joining us. I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you have any more questions, be sure to shoot us a note and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye, guys.